spoken, you've asked, and we've listened. We're going to give you a full behind-the-scenes tour of St James as it is today, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've got to do to the building throughout the restoration process. We're back in the ground floor in the auditorium, so this is where you enter off Lawn Street, and this bar is a later addition. You know, it was put in late 90s when the building became really used as a dance party venue and a sort of a large nightclub. So in the coming weeks we're going to be removing this bar and shipping it back to the original heritage fabrics, working out what's there, what's intact, and then we'll be designing a new bar. We're tossing up at the moment whether we do a modern bar or whether we do sort of try and match the architecture. We're just working through that at the moment because the demands for a bar have kind of changed a lot since the building was originally built. So that's something that we're still going to work through, and I guess what will drive that decision is what we find once we've demolished this. You know, if we find an amazing terrazzo floor like we've got here, under there, then we will obviously try and expose as much of that as possible. But if it's been destroyed, then obviously we might change the footprint to work a bit better. So this bar area here was put in the late 90s when the building turned into a nightclub or was used for dance parties and concerts. And we'll be removing this bar and assessing what's left of the heritage fabrics underneath it, so things like the terrazzo flooring and wall finishes, and then we'll be rebuilding and designing a new bar area. And that's, I guess, one of the things we've got to wrestle with in this project is, are we building a really modern bar so people know that it was definitely something that we've put in afterwards, or are we trying to keep in theme of the original building? And there's arguments for and against. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this area that was put in the late 90s, we're going to assess what's there, and then make a bit of a plan going from there. So one of the key elements that's driving our restoration of this project is the structural upgrade approach that we're using, and we are legally required to structurally upgrade this building to meet the building code, or to as close as practicable to it. And the way we're doing that is through a thing called base isolation, and this is one of the base isolators. And essentially what that means is there's a point below the ground level where we cut the building off and sit the building on 100 or so of these base isolators. And it means in an earthquake, the ground moves, but the building sits still on top. And that has the effect of removing most of the forces from those exterior walls. And above that ground level is where all the heritage fabric sits. So it means that we don't have to touch anywhere near as many walls or upgrade as many walls because we've just taken those forces away with the isolators. So the reason we're base isolating the building is that we don't have to touch the superstructure anywhere near as much. And really that's to protect finishes like these. So we don't have to rebuild these walls. We're essentially taking the forces away from them. And these walls here, the building's built in a relatively modern way. So it's a reinforced concrete portal frame. So it's a concrete frame with brick infill. Over that brick, they then plaster a render over it, and into that render they then carve these lines, and then on top of the render they then paint them to look like ashlar masonry like we have here. So that's what makes the building Baroque in nature. You know, it's illusion on top of illusion on top of illusion. So it's made to look like, you know, this ashlar masonry, but in reality behind it is a concrete brick building. So what you see up here in the ceiling area in here is we've got up there with our fibrous plaster specialists, and we've removed some of these panels, and we've now taken them, putting them on board so we can flatten them back out because they've sagged. We'll then repair them, and then we'll take molds of them so that we can replace them. So ultimately, all in this area, all of these ornate plaster pieces will have to be replaced. We're currently in the staircase that comes off the ground floor lobby heading down into the northern basement. So that's the basement below the lobbies in the building. So this part of the building has sort of always been back of house, and it was used for things like there was a cool room down here for to deal with all the drinks and stuff for the building, and it was mainly storage. So it's never really been a front of house area, and obviously this is a key part of the actual operational side of the theatre, so we'll have to retain it. So what we've had to do here is we've had to excavate this big brick wall, which is an original wall in the building, to not only get its depth, but to work out the exact ground level at the level above. And essentially it's about 3 meters above the ground, so that we're 3 meters below the old auditorium floor, or 3.5 meters below the old auditorium floor at this level. So people often ask me like what I'm not looking forward to in this project, and I guess one of those tasks that I'm really not looking forward to because it's going to be long and tedious, and that's actually the restoration of some of the woodworks, the restoration of all these handrails, and to keep the profiles the same. And it's sort of at the point where it's hard just to sand and keep the profiles that were there. So these are going to have to go through a lot of restoration, and it's going to be long and it's going to be tedious. So that's one of the jobs that I'm not looking forward to in this project. So one of the questions we get asked a lot is really about finishes that we're going to have at the end of this project. And this is a really good way to answer that question. So this is the original marble staircase through here, and it's got a couple of little cracks in it. It's got chips every now and then, and the edges are slightly round from wear. And what we're going to do is we're going to repolish this current marble staircase rather than wholesale replace it. So it will look still like a 100-year-old building. It will be authentic, but it's not going to be absolutely perfect. You will see those imperfections. And I think that's a key concept of our renovation. You know, Granny's got wrinkles. We don't want to fill her full of Botox. At the top of the grand staircase, as you come up from the ground floor lobby on the first floor, the first thing that strikes you is the old members lounge. So come in and have a look. So this area up here is actually a really interesting area. We've done a strip out up here of all the later additions to the building, and what we've found is the same thing that we're hoping to find in the ground floor, which is this amazing terrazzo flooring actually continued on and is still in really good condition. So this will obviously be refinished and polished, and we'll remove this yellow oxidizing glue layer that's on here, and it will come up hopefully as good as new. What's a really interesting thing that's come out about this building as we've been studying the original plans is that originally this was actually outdoors. So those doors that we just came through were the exterior of the building, and these windows weren't actually here, they weren't original. And what we're trying to work out is when exactly they were put in. And what do? You know, do we take this back to being an outdoor, well, a semi-outdoor or an open area, or do we close it in like it was in its later years? As you can see, the windows in this area are in really, really poor condition, and this is the result of essentially them, you know, being somewhere between 80 and 100 years old and just at the end of their life. So New Zealand is in that situation where we're, you know, a really corrosive environment. We're a coastal environment, so there's lots of chlorides in the concrete, for example, and just, you know, the sea air, and it attacks these steel windows, and these are going to need substantial restoration. As you can see in here, the pattern of the fake masonry walls is actually the same as on the outside of the building rather than the inside of the building. And what that supports is I guess the conclusion that this was originally an open to the air environment. And what we've got to work out is when those windows were put in, how they were put in, and were they original, or was this originally built as an open area to the outside? So this is the circle lobby, or the first floor lobby, and as you can see, we've taken it over and turned it into our site office for these works, but this will obviously all be restored. There'll be a nice, amazing new carpet coming in and going in here. The statues that were stolen when we had a break-in a few years ago, we found exact replacements from the same foundry, and we imported them from France especially. So they'll be restored and go back into place, and this level will look amazing. Coming down directly in front of the circle, you come down to the boxes. And this that I'm standing in is the St James Royal Box, and this is where the Queen sat when she used to come here. Coming through the circle lobby, or the first floor lobby, you find yourself on the circle itself. And that's exactly where I am. As you can see, we've removed all the seats up here. Historically, there are approximately 300 seats on this level, and we'll obviously replace that seating with a modern, as time's gone by, people have got larger and they expect more comfort. So we'll obviously be accommodating that, and that will drop the capacity of the theatre. Originally, when this theatre was built, its capacity was 1,900, 2,000 people, and fully seated, we're probably now looking at sort of 1,480 or something around there. And the fire engineering will dictate what that ultimately ends up at, because that will dictate the amount of space that each seat requires. So this carpet that's currently here is from the 1980s. So over the next few months we'll be removing all this carpet, looking at the flooring, looking at the structure beneath the flooring, we're making any repairs and doing any strengthening that we have to do, and then we'll be relaying new carpet that will be exactly the same as it was in 1928. So again, we're taking it back to the original colours that the building would have had opening day 1928. What we've got here is the ornate lattice work that goes around the cove ceilings, and this is a really good example. You can see, that the fibrous material that was inside it has perished and deteriorated to the point where it's no longer doing its job and it's failing. So what we've done is we've removed these strips out here, and we will take them away, fully repair them, and then we will cast molds of them so that we can replicate it. So essentially we'll be making 3-meter lengths of this and replacing it where we need to in the building. And there's about 10 different types of lattice work in this building. We're now in the Grand Circle lobby up on the 2nd floor, and what we've actually done with this area is we've turned it into storage for all the elements and things here that we have to restore as we go forward. So all the things like the light fittings and everything like that. Here we are up in the Grand Circle, or what it's called in the theatre world, the gods. And we've got to remove all these seats up here, uplift the flooring, put new plywood diaphragm floors in, which connect the walls together, and then we'll put new carpet and new seating. And we're at the moment researching the carpet to make sure that we get an authentic carpet.